to August Mastermind. What a great time to continue to grow as leaders, continue to invest in ourselves as we invest in the next generation. So this month, we're going to be talking about how do we understand the differences of generations? How do we understand what makes our generation unique versus the next generation? And really looking a lot at Gen Z. Gen Z is a very different generation. They think differently, they process information differently. So how do we connect with them? How do we lead them? How do we help them to be at our best? Because our future and our businesses depend upon their success. And so we need to be able to lead them well. So before we even get into it, let me hear a little from you. What do you think are some of the key things about different generations? How do those impact our world today? And what do you know about Gen Z?
Well, you can tell me what's the age group of Gen Z? I don't even know.
Okay, so
I
Gen Z we're actually going to look at it here in just a second, see if this thing will ever work.
okay.
Gen Z is currently 15 to 30-year-olds.
Oh, it's a me culture. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I have a 26-year-old and a almost 30-year-old, and I'm going to work less as possible to make the most money. That's the
Hey,
mindset there. Yeah.
it is their mindset. You're exactly right.
Mhm.
We're going to look at that. Why is that? What's created that mindset, right?
I think,
This.
yeah, exactly. That's
It's a big part
exactly
of
what
it.
I was gonna say is the phone and the how easy it is to do stuff over the phone or it's just I've been working the last couple of weeks with Andrew, who's he's a 21-year-old, and what I'm asking him to do is make a lot of phone calls, right?
Yeah.
And it's just and I also have a almost 50-year-old man who's doing the same thing. And the difference in the two of being able to, hey, I just know I need to just grind and call 20 people in 30 minutes, opposed to, hey, I have all day to call these 30 people.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for sure.
Okay, so let me ask you this. How much of that do you think is unique to a young generation versus really understanding that there's probably a lot of people just like that in every generation?
You know,
I'm asking, what do you think?
no, I agree. I mean, I feel like I don't fit into the generation that I'm in with some of my characteristics. And I think it's just me adapting, being in the trade I'm in at a really young age. I had to adapt with everyone around me, which kind of changed me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Yeah, anytime that you have mentors or different people in different seasons of your life, they have a huge impact on who you are, on how you process information. We've talked about DISC assessments before, and part of your DISC assessment is made up of three things. Your DNA is number one, just who you are and who you were created to be, the different role models that you have in your life, and then different environments. In different environments, we think and process differently depending on what our role is in those different environments. And then just talking about those role models and different people that you worked with at a young age, they had a huge impact on who you are. Stephanie, what do you think? Look like
Yeah,
you're thinking
I
there.
I have. So I'm basically at the very tail end of a baby boomer. I'll be 60 this year. And so
Okay.
I have always been a baby boomer that in the mindset, and I've worked with people like, it's kind of like there's a problem and I'll say, did you handle the problem? Well, I emailed them. Okay, so they haven't gotten back to you yet, but the problem's still going on. So did you pick up the phone and call them? Well, no, I emailed them. And nothing infuriates me more. Like the human interaction has gone out the window with these younger people. Like just pick up the phone and solve the flippin' problem. So my husband has the same thing at work right now too. And his is major problems, like rail cars don't show up because they didn't pick up the phone, you know? So anyway, it's a different mindset. And, you know, and this thing right here, just, the
Yep.
communication skills are so lacking to have a conversation with, like, my children, no phones allowed at the table. You know, I mean, I don't care if they're adults and they're here, you know, it's just learning to communicate. And, you know, we had this conversation just the other day. You can get fired, hired, proposed to, ask for a divorce, everything through a text message these days.
Right.
Yeah, it's
You're
pretty
right.
sad. Yeah.
All right, Ryan, you're our young guy on here tonight. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think I missed the original question, but I guess it had to do something with Gen Z and phones.
Well, we're
Communicate.
just talking about generations in the different generations. How do you see the differences in them? We're going to talk a lot about Gen Z over this month, but really you got to look at all the generations. What do you see
Yeah.
as the differences?
I mean, I think I'm a millennial. So, I
Okay.
mean, I think you know, I think what the media likes to portray is that millennials are lazy and they don't want to work and just dreamers. Um, I don't think I would categorize myself into that. I probably line up a little bit more with, I don't know, whichever one was before, or yeah, before that. But
Gen
yeah,
X, we're going to talk about that.
okay. Yeah, no, there's definitely some differences. I mean, I I've worked with people that are, you know, I've had people work for me that I've been over them that are in their 50s. Like I've been in a job before where I had 4 people that worked for me and I was younger than them by the one closest to me was 17 years older than me. That was the
Wow.
closest to my age. So that was an interesting, you know, trying to figure out how to communicate with them directly, what they need from me. Um, but yeah, and then, you know, now got younger people, 20 years old, 18-year-olds, especially working on a job site. I mean, you got some, you know, some guys you're like, man, I don't even know how old this guy is. But yeah, you kind of have to adapt and learn, you know, how to talk to and communicate with each of them differently.
You're right. And that's so good. Every generation really, so when you talk about disc and how people communicate differently based upon their disc, and then you look at generations, you see some layering that has to happen and understanding different generations respond to different things. Different generations will take credit for the things that are best in their generation and not talk about anything that's the worst part of their generation, right? That's just the reality. That's how we are in life. Is we never want to talk about what our faults are. We just want to talk about, well, what's great about our generation and what's the problem with all the other generations. So I will make sure I send you a link that you can download everything that we're going to talk about tonight. I don't know why this has been working. My TV lost connection to the internet and won't get it back. And so I'll make sure that you have everything tonight. So the goal, anytime that we learn more information, the goal is not just to give you information. The goal is never the transfer of information, but to be able to receive the information that transforms your leadership. And so what I want to do tonight is give you some information, help you to open up your eyes to see different generations, who they are, how they think, what makes them unique, what makes them good, and what creates some challenges. And out of that information, we are transformed in our leadership. We're transformed in how we communicate, on how we approach them, really that we could all be successful in it. All right, so let's talk about it. Stephanie, you said you're the last end of the boomer generation. So the boomers are 1946 to 1964. Okay? They are really most, you could think of this generation of the get off my yard generation. Okay, get off my yard. I've got everything right. Leave me alone. I'm just going to sit on my porch and drink my beer. Get off my lawn. they're at a stage of life that they are experiencing new things, and it's a different season of health, of life, of strength, of retirement. What are all these things? And so that generation, that 46 to 64 are our boomers. And it was a huge generation. After that is Gen X. Gen X is 1965 to 1979. Gen X is, I really wish I had this picture to show you tonight. There's a picture. This represents the average Gen X kid growing up, and it's a dad on his knees, and this little baby is in the yard holding a sparkler, and the dad is smoking a cigarette, and ashes are dropping on the kid. And you're going, that's a Gen X kid. The Gen X was the ones that were told, hey, it's Saturday morning, mom's cleaning the house, get out of the house, go ride your bike. We'll see you when the streetlights come on. Anybody relate to that? Okay, maybe I'm a little older. So I am, Seven, you said you're at the end of the boomers. I'm at the end of Gen X. Gen X really is a generation that has a lot of anger. They were told, well, the millennials have it all. You're not the boomers. And you were told just to fend for yourself. It's the first generation that was like latchkey kids. They walked home. They had a key to get in their house, and both parents worked. So it was a really transition. There's also this unique subset of Gen X and Gen Y called Zennials, and it's 78 to 83, this little subset. This Zennials are the ones who had the introduction of technology that Gen Y did, but also grew up in Gen X without the technology. So they had black and white TVs as young kids and had internet before they got out of the house. So this kind of weird split mini set between Gen X and Gen Y. So Gen Y are our millennials. Millennials are 1980 to 1994. They are most, if remember, we're talking about generalizations. This isn't everybody, but Gen Y is best classified by the idea that everyone gets a trophy, right? You win, I win, everybody wins. Everybody gets a trophy. You participated today. You're fine. You get a trophy, right? That is our Gen Y and millennials, 1980 to 1994. And then it's our Gen Z, 1995 to 2009. That means they're 15 to 30-year-olds. This generation, if you're going to put a meme on them or a GIF on them, it would be, hey, I tried, that should be enough, leave me alone. And I think, Stephanie, that you're even referring to that. Well, I tried, shouldn't that be enough? Ryan, where do you fit in this?
I was born in 91, so
Okay,
I'm a
you're
millennial.
millennial, all right. John?
I am 1980, so I'm right in the middle there.
Okay, so you have a little bit of Gen X, a little bit of Gen Y. You're kind of in that middle gap of those Zennials, right?
Right.
A little bit unique. Okay, so 46 to 64, that would be 60 plus. Okay, and so I did the math on this, and I would have the graphic up there to be able to show you that this is 60 plus, because at that age, they may not even be awake still to know how to do the math. All right. Gen X, that's 45 to 60. And I'm going to tell you the math on that 45 to 60, because you were told, you actually know the math. Gen X knows the math because they were told you will never have a calculator with you. So you better learn how to do the math, right? That was what Gen X was told. You better learn how to do the math. And then there is our millennials, that's 30 to 44. I'm going to tell them the ages and give them the numbers, because they were given like some new math, and I'm not even sure if they understand how that works still. So I want to make sure that everybody knows the math. And then our Gen Z is our 15 to 30. They don't even know what math is. So I had to make sure they had those numbers, right? You know, every generation has things that make them unique, that make them great, that make them good for the community and good for our cities and for our culture, but they also all present their own struggles. And here's the problem that I want you to see today. The problem is this Gen Z, 15 to 30, are moving into the workforce. And this generation is less equipped than any generation before them to be in the workforce. They are less equipped than any generation before them to be in the workforce. But here's the other side. The older generation is less equipped than ever to lead a younger generation. They speak a different language. They think differently. They process information. So the older generation doesn't know how to lead them. The younger generation isn't equipped. So what do we do? And if we're not careful, our businesses are going to struggle. Our leadership is going to struggle. Our finances are going to struggle. Our future is going to struggle because there's this gap and we don't know how to bridge that gap. So what's your thoughts when you hear these things?
Sounds like there's going to be lots of miscommunication, misunderstanding, frustration, breakdowns because you don't know how to talk to each other. And, you know, like you said, if they're not equipped at all and they're not willing to learn, well, yeah, that's a huge disconnect.
Okay. Absolutely.
I think you said it right there, not willing to learn, because like even I remember working at a credit union and literally they introduced the computer. We had dot matrix printers back then, if you know what that is. And I remember them introducing like the whole computer online. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to learn this, you know, and I was young at the time. And then now though, as I'm older, I look to this younger generation to train me and to teach me. I mean, I'm hiring
Good.
people to do my social media for me because I know I'm not going to get it as fast and I'm not consistent. And whatever's going to help me build my brand, build my business, I know I have to lean on that younger generation to help me with it. So, you know, a few years ago, I thought I could do everything, but I can't. And I know that my brain just doesn't work that way anymore. I mean, I was born December 30th, 1964. So I only have a boomer for 2 days.
Okay. Yeah. So you're really on a split as well.
I am, but my mind goes to the boomer generation. Yeah.
You know, one of the things about the boomers is it was a generation that was booming in population because their parents came back from war. I have a friend that reminds me, he was in the military, and he says, anytime you see some old vet and he's got his Army hat on and his Marine hat on, just know at one point that was a bad dude. Now he's a frail old man. This last week, I got to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was absolutely incredible. I got to be part of an inside group. I got to hang out with players. I got to sit and have dinner. Randy White's at the next table over. I got to eat breakfast with Bob Lilly, Mel Renfro. Absolutely incredible experience. These old, tough, strong guys are no longer that. That's not who they are anymore. And what I realized is that's a reality of every one of us. Our greatest strengths won't always be there. And so we need to make sure that we're always learning how to connect in order that when the things that we were once great at no longer exist, or we're not great at those things anymore, you bring other people around you that will help you in those areas. Stephanie, I think that's exactly what you're saying of, I realize I have a weakness here. They have a strength here. How do I leverage that? How do I use that in order that I can teach them a little business and they can teach me something else? And I think that's good. We're going to talk about that next week. It's really good. So let's talk about this Gen Z. What makes them unique? What makes them different than any other generation before them? So a couple things. This is the first generation that does not need an adult to get information. Think about that for a second. They do not need an adult to teach them something. They need someone to teach them stuff, but they didn't need an adult to teach them information because everything's at their fingertips, right? It is also a generation that will learn more from a device than they ever will from someone else. Okay, I'm gonna talk to John and Stephanie. Ryan, you probably never experienced this, but did y'all have encyclopedias in your house? Yeah, I remember like having this old set of encyclopedias, and it was all of the information in the world in these 30 volumes. These 30 books contained everything. Ryan, I know this is hard to imagine. 30 books was everything Google could ever produce.
Yep.
And so it taught you everything. And so you'd spend a lot of money and have this set of books, and you didn't even realize they were like done and outdated in about 3 years, but they were, right? Today, knowledge is doubling so fast that if we're not constantly learning, we're already behind.
Yeah. You know, Nick,
As
can I
leaders-
tell you something?
Yeah, go ahead.
That in school, when they had you do a report, a book report, you had to go to an encyclopedia and you had to research all that. But National Geographic, like we had stacks of those because I could do a report of, I mean, the first time I ever saw a naked person was in National Geographic, I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, they had no clothes on. And I remember thinking, but that was all the information we had. And that was, I mean, to this day, like my grandparents, until they passed, had the encyclopedias, and I would go through and think, what a plethora of information we had at our fingertips. And now it's like, just Google whatever you need. But anyway, I thought that
And
was
it's
really
instant.
interesting.
Or ask Siri, or I
Yeah.
hope I was making sure Siri didn't try to pop up. Ask Siri, ask GPT, ask Google, right? Everything is there. It's not a good or bad thing. We need to be very careful not to think that changes are good or bad. They're just changes. It's just different. With different comes a difference in how we process information, how we need information. One of the things that about YouTube, you can find how to do anything, right? But you never search for how to do something until you need to know how to do it. And I think doing research papers and all those kind of things that we grew up doing, you had to learn stuff that you didn't need to know. And so one of the things unique about this generation is they're going, I don't need to know all that. I need to know what I need to know when I need to know it. So they have a little bit different perspective on that, but it creates this gap as well. So they're the first generation who does not need an adult. They are a generation of first who can broadcast every thought and every emotion at any moment of the day. Right? Everything is on social media. They can broadcast any thought they have. They have 24/7 stimuli constantly going on. They have earbuds in, they're having a conversation, they're watching reels. It's all going at the same time. They will learn more from a device than a class. Here's one of the things that I want you to hear about this. Gen Z lives in isolation and in constant social contact. Think about that for a second. They have both. They're in isolation, and at the same time, they are socially connected, but not emotionally connected. And so it creates a gap. Now, they are also a generation who have got to this place because they have adults who have created and enabled their narcissism. And I would guess most people would say that Gen Z is very selfish and very self-focused. But it was a generation who taught them that, who enabled that and allowed that. And so you're seeing the byproduct of what was in their life and what they learned. So they are a generation of first. They are also a generation of first who replaced a board game, a clock, an alarm, a watch, all of those things with one device. All those things that we had, they replaced with one device. So when you think about these things that make them unique, they are the first in so many different things. It creates a different mindset. So let me tell you what I mean by a different mindset. They grew up in a world of speed. Everything was instant. It wasn't just snail mail. It wasn't just email. It was instant messenger, Instagram. Everything was instant for them. So they grew up in a world of speed. Not only did they grow up in a world of speed, but they grew up in a world of convenience. Everything was at their fingertips. What do you mean 2-day shipping? I can't get it by the end of the day? I'm not going to the store. It should be delivered to my front porch within 6 to 12 hours. It's a world of convenience, a world of entertainment. This is the generation that grew up with moms having Tahoes or minivans, and there had to be a movie playing since the time they were born. In the back seat, they were 2 years old, and there had to be a movie. They walked into and moms gave them a phone to watch. Everything was about entertainment. Everything was thrown right in their face, right there in front of them. They were always being entertained. It's also a world full of nurture. So Gen X grew up with parents who said, hey, we're working, figure it out, get tough, drink from a water hose, and figure it out. Find out where you're going to have lunch on Saturday as you're riding your bike around. Then we went to helicopter parents. And helicopter parents were always just hovering and watching and seeing what was going on, right? We don't have helicopter parents anymore. We have what they call pillow parents. They are so guarded with their kids, they won't even let the kid fall. They line their life with pillows so they can't ever get hurt. But it's in those times of scuffing your knee, it's in those times of getting hurt emotionally, it's in those times of going through hard things and experiencing hard things that you actually learn, grow, and get stronger for life. So they have grown up in a world all about nurturing them. And then they grew up in a world of entitlement. Everyone's equal. Really thinking about, John, what you said about working with older guys. Ryan, you talked about the same thing. You were actually in charge of guys older than you. No one who grew up in the older part of millennials or Gen X or Gen Z would ever think it's okay to have a boss younger than you. Gen Z thinks I'm entitled to be a boss at 24. Ron, that's not a slam on you. You've earned your position, okay? They grew up entitled that everything should be equal and they should have the rights of everybody else who's been in the company 30 years. It's just different. But here's the consequences when this happens. When you grow up in a world of speed, convenience, entertainment, nurture, and entitlement, slow is bad. Hard is bad. Boring is bad. Risk is bad. Labor is bad. If it's all about speed and immediate, then anything that's slow is a bad thing. Anything that's not convenient is hard, and therefore it's a bad thing. Anything that's not entertaining me and being right in my face is boring, and therefore it's bad. If it's not nurturing me and making sure that I'm safe all the time, it's risky, and therefore it's bad. And then if it's not entitling me, giving me everything, that means it's work and it's labor, and therefore it's bad. Do you see the struggle of this generation? They were taught things and grew up in a world very different than any generation before them. And here's where it really gets complicated. Well, actually, before I get there, what's your thoughts on hearing those things?
Every bit of what you just said is 100% true. Everything you said, I have thought of, felt, or I see, even with my own, which is kind of sad.
It actually makes you give them a little bit more grace, doesn't it?
It does. It does. We tried really hard to curb some of that. We only had so much influence in our own home versus out
Yeah.
in the real world. And, you know, I mean, our 29-year-old just moved home a couple years ago for a short period of time. But it's been beautiful, not gonna lie. But I've seen the difference, a shift, the entitlement part. You know, being on your own for 8 years and moving home to your parents has been very difficult. So, yeah, but you know, we're set in our ways and things that we do, we say, the way we run things. And so we've had to pick which hill to die on here.
Okay. different topic real quick, but Stephanie, that is such a good parenting tip. You need to decide what hills to die on,
Yeah.
what are really important. Because if you fight on everything and everything is a battle, then everything is equal, but not
Mhm.
everything is equal.
No.
So you need to truly choose what things are important that you're willing to fight for your family.
Yeah.
And some things are okay to let go,
Yeah.
but you gotta
Big
figure
time.
out those things.
Mhm.
So, all right. So the other thing I want you to hear about Gen Z is they are a generation of paradox. And they really are a strange generation of paradox. And here's what I mean by that. They're a generation that is more sheltered than any generation before them. They grew up with pillow parents, not even letting them fall. They grew up, everything was sheltered for them. And at the same time, they are more pressured and are under more pressure than any generation before them. That's a paradox. That's a weird place to be. More sheltered and more pressured. That's tough. You see the impact of mental health, of stress and anxiety that we see, and we think this generation is just weak. It's not just that, maybe that's the case, but it's not the full story. They have grown up sheltered from any pressure, and now they're under more pressure than any generation before them. It's a weird place to be. Here's another one. They are more self-absorbed. Anybody say, yeah, Gen Z, 15 to 30-year-olds are more selfish and self-absorbed than any other generation before them. But a lot of research says they will also probably be the most generous generation ever. How does that work? They are all about themselves, and they are more generous than any generation before them. That's a paradox. That is living in this tension. The deal is they are more generous about things that matter, and they're more self-absorbed about things that they don't think matter. The problem is what you think matters and what they think matters may not be the same thing. You're looking through their lens, and they're looking through a completely different lens than you are. Here's another paradox for you. Gen Z is more adventurous and more fearful. Here's what I mean by that. You will have a 22-year-old who will drive all the way across the country to go to a concert. They will be adventurous. They will go do crazy things that generations before them may not even thought to go do. And they'll just go do it. And at the same time, they could be working for a company for 6 months, and they're supposed to get a 50-cent raise. And they're too fearful to go ask for the 50-cent raise that was already promised to them. So they won't ask for something easy, which you think would be easy, but they'll travel across the country to go on some adventure. That's a paradox.
Can I
Thoughts
ask a
about that?
question? Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
ma'am.
Do you think it's because they're more fearful to ask somebody that might be in leadership for something like that because the social skills are lacking on how to do that? Or is it lack of self-confidence?
I think it's a combination of those things.
Okay,
They are not good at communicating well.
yeah,
They don't know how to communicate well. And there's just this fear of doing something they've never done before, especially when there's a direct personal question involved with it. A lot of one research showed that they are equally likely to quit and go find another job that's 50 cents more rather than actually asking for the raise that they were entitled to. It's just a weird position to be in. So therefore they don't know how to communicate, and you get a text message, hey, I'm done, I quit. You go, you were owed a raise, what just happened? And the boss is confused and going, I don't even know why you quit. You were doing a great job, we loved you being here. And this fear of asking overwhelmed them, and so it was easier just to quit. Okay, so they were sheltered, self-absorbed, adventurous. The other thing about Gen Z on this paradox is they have higher potential and they are high maintenance. They are high potential and they are high maintenance. I don't know if you experience that with people that you work with, but Gen Z expects a lot. They want a lot of flexibility. They want to be entitled to leave early and to show up late, to work these hours, but not those hours, not on this day. And they have a extremely high potential as a generation. The things that they're going to accomplish is going to be remarkable. The things that have been put in place for them to be able to accomplish, it's just amazing. They think differently. They think about technology differently. They think about the future differently. And at the same time, they're self-absorbed and high maintenance. It's a paradox. It's weird. And so we have to learn to communicate with them and to connect with them. The other thing is they are non-confrontational and ambitious. And this is the high potential and the high maintenance going together. They are extremely ambitious. And here's what I mean by that. You will have them not ask for the raise that they deserve because they don't want to confront someone. And they will also blur the lines between what is the different levels of a company. They will live in corporate America, and they will go to be on the job for 3 months, and they will go to their boss's boss and see them in a hallway and go, "Hey, I have an idea that I'd like to share with you." And you're going, "Who are you? When did you start working here?" I started last week. I'm the new intern for Bob." And you're going, "What?" So they have this ambition. They want to be able to drive. They want to be able to do all these things. And they don't want to confront anybody on issues because they don't want to be confronted. It's a generation of paradox. And here's the biggest one. Are you ready for this one? The biggest paradox of Gen Z is that 10 is the new 15 and 26 is the new 18. Here's what I mean by that. At 10 years old, kids are exposed and know things and have experienced things that they shouldn't know, see, or have heard till they're 15. And at the exact same time, 26-year-olds act like they're still 18. So we have this mush of younger being more mature and older being more immature. And it just creates this mush of going, man, this kid's so mature and this kid's older and not as mature. And so how do you deal with those things? It really is a generation of paradox. All right. So of those different paradoxes, which one are you most shocked by?
I would think about rather going and asking for the 50-cent raise, leaving and looking for another job. That one just kind of baffles me. I think that's the one that sticks out to me the most.
It baffles a lot of people. So you're not alone on that one. What else?
I will say, and you said it a second ago, Nick, and the fact that they will, I say break up, that's not the word. They will quit their job via text message is just astounding to me, because it happened to Megan 2 days ago. That 2 different people have texted her over the past week and would just send these long paragraphs of, "I'm done." And you're just like, you were here yesterday and perfectly fine. Like, what just
And we're
happened?
happy. Yeah. And
Yeah.
they were happy and they were enjoying their job.
Yeah, you're like, I don't understand. I don't like, if I send a text message to my boss that I quit, they'd be like, "What are you, a child? What are you doing? Pick up the phone, come into work, and we'll talk about it."
Yeah.
That mind boggles me.
And that right there is what makes this generation so hard to lead. Remember, told you 2 things at the front. It's not just that you have information, it's that the information you received tonight begins to transform your leadership. And that's what we have to think. How do I transform my leadership for a new generation? And then the other thing is they are less equipped for the workforce than ever before. And the older generation is less equipped to lead them than ever before. And here's what I want you to hear. That's not on them. That's on every other generation. They don't know anything different. And as senior leaders, not senior meaning old, but just if you've been in the workforce for more than 4 years, then you should be the one leading and learning and getting better at being able to lead them, helping them to get in the workforce, helping them to be successful. Knowing that your success is directly tied to how well Gen Z can come into your business, learn, grow, and be able to interact with customers. You need them to be successful. Ryan, what's your thoughts on this?
One of the things you said that I thought was really interesting is, I guess, the way that they're absorbing information, and it's not like, I don't feel like kids these days are in that group range. They're not learning anything for the long term. Like you said, they go and get the information that they need for that very second, and then it's
Right.
gone. I mean, I've got some cousins that are in high school, and I mean, they're juniors in high school, and they don't know how to do their algebra. There's an app for it. You take a picture, it does your homework for you. I don't know how that goes over during test time, but I imagine not well. But yeah, it's yeah, the instant gratification and just only need, I mean, everything is DoorDash, and I mean, just the general knowledge level, I feel like is definitely not the same.
Yeah, that's a really good takeaway, Ryan, that the general knowledge level is not the same. So I have a really strong hot sports opinion on this, okay?
Yeah.
I do believe that a lot of the information we had to learn was because we thought we had to learn it. I do think that Gen Z goes, why am I learning this? Why are you spending time, hours and hours for years to learn algebra? When am I going to do algebra in my life? And if I ever need to do algebra, my iPad will do it for me.
Mhm.
So the bigger question is, why are we still teaching and testing for those things? And who's making the money off these tests? Whole different sports opinion. We'll have that conversation a different time. But are we really equipping them with the knowledge and information they actually need? And that's the bigger question. What information do they need? How do we equip them for what they need to know? Not just, my wife gives me a hard time. I pull out random facts and random information, and she goes, why do you know that? I said, I have no idea why I know that. It's taking up too many files. I only have so many files to have, and it's wasting file space, right? And so we need to make sure they know what do they actually need to know? And how do we focus on that, not on just information? For a long time, I was right there with you going, y'all, you fools need to learn something. You need to have a base level of knowledge. I just don't know what that base level is.
Question.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
So I think you say you have so many files. I think, back in the day when you had to write everything down, when you write it down, you retain it. It's kind of
Sure.
like at church. I do not do my Bible on my phone. If I read it in my Bible and I make notes, I'll retain the sermon, I'll retain the verse. Because I think we used to write everything down. There's something about having to write it as you're thinking it retains. And I don't think anybody, not anybody, certain age groups are retaining anything because there's nothing being written down anymore. And so I do ACT and SAT testing. And I used to remember we had to write the certification in cursive. And you would think I asked them to pull a third leg out of their head or something, and they would look
Yeah.
at me like, what the hell's that? And I go, it's cursive. Who doesn't know cursive? I mean, I was like, so I just said print, and we had to put tells on everything. Like they didn't know what it meant, but I just thought, when you were saying that, like so many files, yes, but we're still loading those files, to this day until
Absolutely.
the day we die. But I think like not reading an iPad, but reading a book and marking in the book, where it makes you remind you what you're reading. I don't know. It's just, it might be an old school thing, but
Okay, let me challenge you. Okay,
Mhm.
let me challenge you. Why do you need to retain the information?
It's knowledge. For me, I
But why do I
like a
need to know
plethora
that
of
until I need to
knowledge.
know it again?
I think it's a generational thing.
It is.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted you to get. You were ingrained. This is what it means to be successful. You go to school, you know your times tables, you know how to
Mhm.
do algebra, you know how to write in cursive, you know how. And is that what it actually took to be successful? Maybe at that time, but is it what it's needed for them to be successful?
Yeah. True.
Listen, I'm not even telling you my opinion on this. I'm just challenging our thinking.
Right.
We have to begin thinking differently because
Yeah.
they're thinking differently.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing.
I get you. I get you. I think that as far as the math thing, if computers go down in a fast food restaurant, man, they're at a loss counting back some money to you. I'm just like, you know what? Let me just write it, Dick and Jane it down for you, which for you younger people, Dick and Jane was a book, see spot run.
So
Anyway.
I hope this makes you think differently. That's the goal for tonight. I wanted to set up the next couple weeks of what we're going to talk about for generations. And I needed to give you some base. And I want you to really think this week. Your challenge is to challenge some of your thinking. Is this actually important for me to know? Is it important for them to know? Or am I just so conditioned that this is the only way for success? For me, I'm really challenging. Does a kid need to go to college? If they're not going into a special thing, is it necessary? Why pay all this money if you're not in a specialized field? What do high schools need to teach? At what point do we need to allow an 8th grader, 9th grader, 10th grader to go on a specialty track? And it's okay if you're going this way or this way. Not everyone has to be here. I think general education is the thing that has put us so far behind. So we need to we talked about it last month on the 5 lessons from baseball. Don't be a specialist, or don't be a utility player, be a specialist. And that specialist could be a lot of different things in life. All right, thoughts, comments, questions? All right. Hey, I apologize for TV not working tonight. I have no idea what's going on. We'll get it fixed. Hey, I do appreciate you guys. Appreciate how you continue to learn and to grow and invest in yourself, investing in your future, and making sure that you are best prepared to help the next generation. Just remember, when you get better, everyone around you gets better, and better is always better. All right, you guys have a good night. I'll make sure y'all get all this information. Came from several different sources that I put together, everything from Deloitte to Tim Elmore, Simon Sinek stuff, all came together to kind of put all this stuff together. And so I'll make sure I share all that with y'all.
Righty, have a
All
good
right,
evening.
y'all have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, bye.